Okay, we're chatting with Jerusalem Post reporter for religious affairs, Jonah Mandel. Thanks for joining us. You cover the religious community, Ashkenazim, Sephardim. Can you please shed some light on why the Sephardim wear the black hats and the black suits? That typically has not been the case for Sephardic Jews over the centuries. It seems to be like a new phenomenon for them since they immigrated to Israel. Is it because they want to be accepted by the Ashkenazim who are religious, or what's that all about?
Well, like you said, let's take it one step back and ask, why in the world do Haredi Ashkenazim wear the clothes that they wear? Why do the Hasidim wear rabbit tails on their heads, and what's it with the black suits and the long coats? That's not Jewish. But in the same way that was an imitation of the surrounding that the Jews wanted to be part of, I think that can apply to what happened with the Sephardim and when they came here in the 50s and were basically drawn into the existent Ashkenazi Haredi establishment. They imitated the code of dress, which is very important for the Haredim. It's like your uniform. It's how you are. So they dress in a kind of not like a Hasidim. They don't have the shtreimels, of course, but with the suits and the hats and the short beards, most of them. That is the Chevron style, like the Litvakish kind of way of dressing. And yeah, it's an imitation of the Ashkenazim to be part of that group. But if it's going to change, it's hard to say, because now that's their tradition, right? For the past 50 years. So, Haredi Jews don't like to change traditions. It's hard to say. But not all of them do, and I don't think there's a growing trend. On the contrary, now that people are becoming more and more aware of their roots, I'm sure there's going to be an opposite trend of Sephardi Haredim dressing more like the chief rabbi Amar, sometimes like with the traditional Sephardi clothes. But also suits are nice. Wearing a suit can be a neutral kind of dress code, but initially it was to be part of the mainstream Ashkenazi Haredim in Israel, for sure.
Okay, you've been covering religion and the religious aspects of Israeli society. Obviously, the Haredim, the religious folks, many of them don't work. They get subsidies from the government for various aspects of their life. They don't serve in the military. It's been a big point of contention for a lot of secular Israelis. Where do you see that going as far as their integration with the greater Israeli society? Are they going to continue to get these subsidies and not have that involvement in the military and other aspects of the society? Are they going to be segregated, or where is that going?
Well, that's a very good question, and the answer is that it is going into a direction of more Haredi involvement in the labor force and in the military. Now you've got to realize that one is connected to the other. In Israel, if you postpone your military service, which is the legal status of many of the Haredim who don't serve in the military, you can't legally work, right? Because you're postponing your military service for a certain reason, which is to learn Torah. So during that time, you can't work. What can you do? You can learn Torah, right? That's why you postponed your military service. You postpone it until you're old enough for the army to say, we don't want you anymore. Let's say that's about the age of 40 or your late 30s. And then what? And then you start to look for a job. You start to get, look for vocational training or whatever. You're too old. You've got a big family. You can't start with, a low salary. And it's a very, very big problem. It causes lots of poverty in the Haredi community. And there's lots of movement within the Haredi society to change that, because it's not healthy not to work. Okay, so if you're a huge Torah genius and you should be spending your days and nights learning Torah, that's fine. There's always been geniuses who should devote their lives to Torah learning. But what happened is that from a very small group of Haredim getting the state exemption from the army, and then being supported to some degree by the state afterwards, from a small group, that group has grown. And there's lots of concern in Israeli society, let's say in the army, that there's not enough, because the Haredim are the largest growing population in Israel, there's a concern that they won't have enough manpower for the army. And in the workforce too, for the same reason. If the Haredim aren't productive enough with their taxes and employment, then Israeli economy is facing some very, very problematic times in about 10 minutes, in the future. So there's lots of Haredim movement from within the Haredim to promote employment, to reach understandings with the army, to enable a more culturally sensitive military service for the Haredim, which would enable them to serve in the military. Some of them serve as technicians, and then they've got a job that they can, use in civilian life. And of course, if they serve in the military, then they can legally start working at a normal age, like a normal age to start your career, and not fall into the workforce at the age of 40 when you're too old and you've got too many kids to start working, or to not start working. But it's very problematic. So there's lots of concern from Israeli society, but primarily from the Haredi side of it, and there is a lot of movement toward that. Of course, there's lots of differences between the different groups of Haredim and their attitude to the army and to the state, but generally speaking, there is a movement toward more involvement in the labor force and in the military.
Okay, thanks for chatting with us.
Pleasure.